Welcome everybody to Forza Horizon 4, and today we're taking a look at the 2014 Infiniti Q50 Eau Rouge. Now this is based on the first generation Q50, which began production in 2013. This is named after the famous corner at Spa, and it was unveiled as a prototype at the 2014 Geneva International Motor Show, but sadly plans to put it into production were shelved in January 2015, which is a great shame because this has a lot of potential behind it and is easily one of the best sports saloon cars on this game, quite frankly. Makes mincemeat of other cars that are around at the same time, and a lot of that is down to the fact that this is inspired by Formula 1 aspects, as it's part of Infiniti's partnership with the Red Bull racing team, and parts of that include the fact that it's got a bespoke carbon fibre bodywork, including a carbon fibre front splitter, rear diffuser, side sill skirts, carbon fibre roof and door mirror casings, as well as some carbon fibre included in the interior. It's got 20-inch lightweight forged wheels, a dual exit exhaust system, while having 20mm wider wheel arches, and high grip sports steering wheel while having Formula 1 style paddles behind the steering wheel. So it's got all of that going for it, and then couple that to the fact that it's got a lot of power from an engine from the Nissan GTR nonetheless, meaning that it's got 560 horsepower, 442 pounds-feet of torque from a 3.8 litre twin turbocharged V6 engine. And as we know from the Nissan GTR, that engine is a great engine, so putting it in a four-door practical saloon is inspired, quite frankly. And to keep all that power in check, it's got an all-wheel drive system from the Q70, and it also nicks its 7-speed automatic gearbox from that car as well. So yeah, it unfortunately could not fit the drivetrain from the Nissan GTR in this vehicle, which is a shame because that all-wheel drive system and gearbox in that car are phenomenal. But the all-wheel drive system and the automatic gearbox nonetheless do a perfectly reasonable amount of a perfectly reasonable job, especially when you consider this is only a prototype. I'm sure if production were ever to have commenced, it would have been given more development. But yeah, what is here is great because you've got a really practical, well laid out saloon car, which as you can see has plenty of room in the rear and a pretty sizable boot as well, easily one of the more spacious boots on a four-door saloon on this game, with a huge amount of power from a Nissan GTR engine and all-wheel drive to keep it all in check. So yeah, a great combination, quite frankly, especially considering it also looks pretty decent. It's easily one of the more interesting looking four-door saloons out there, and it doesn't weigh quite as much as it rivals as well, as it only weighs 3,836 pounds, whereas a same kind of time period, BMW M5 or an Audi or a Jaguar XFRS weigh in excess of 4,000 pounds. So yeah, certainly got the weight advantage. But nonetheless, let's get out onto the open road and see what this car can do. Now with that all-wheel drive system and all of that power, this is, as you'd expect, ludicrously quick. And yeah, even though I'm not a massive fan of how the engine sounds, there's no doubt in what it can do in terms of acceleration, speed and general performance, because yeah, it's a riot, quite frankly. And it turns what was pretty much an ordinary, sensible saloon car into an absolute track monster, which is pretty much where this car would belong if, in all honesty, if we were ever to have it out in the real world in full production. But sadly that is never going to be the case. But to see what Infiniti could do at the time is really rather nice, quite frankly. And yeah, I have no idea why the shelf production. It makes no sense, to be honest, because BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Jaguar, they're all putting out equally as fast saloon cars even today, so there's clearly a market for it. And quite frankly, they were also ahead of the game because obviously the likes of BMW and Jaguar and that lot have come along to downsizing their engines in some of their sporting cars, and this obviously only having a V6 at less than 4 litres is well below whatever Jaguar, BMW, Audi were putting out at the time. So yeah, ahead of its time, and really rather good in terms of acceleration as well. 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds, 0 to 100 in 8.617 seconds, and it will go into a top speed of 211 miles an hour. Now granted, that top speed is theoretical, no doubt would have been pegged back if it had been put into production, probably around 170, 180 miles an hour, if not even less, because obviously that's BMW and that lot limit their cars, and for a price you have to take the limiter off. But yeah, it's still a really quick car, and the all-wheel drive system does keep everything in check, as this does handle really rather good. Not quite as good as, say, a rear-wheel drive BMW maybe, because that's a little bit more agile, and the current M5 with its all-wheel drive system and 600 horsepower is no doubt quicker and a lot more agile than this. But for a car from 6 years ago and only a prototype, it is really rather a great showcase of what would have been had it been properly made. And quite frankly, I think Infiniti and obviously Nissan, who own Infiniti, were complete mentalists to not have put this into production. My only guess is that they were worried that Infiniti, not being the most well-known of brands, especially in Europe, it wouldn't have gone down well. It probably would have gone down well in America, because that's where Infiniti are primarily sold. But I guess they wouldn't have thought that it would have sold well over here, especially in the UK, where Infiniti aren't really a big brand. And yeah, they probably also won't want to compete against the Nissan GTR, which is obviously the premier sports car for Nissan. So yeah, they're my only reasonings I can come up with for it not happening. I've not been able to find out why they didn't put it into production, but logic dictates that might be been why, but could have been financial reasons or anything else like that, quite frankly. But yeah, it's a great shame really, because it is a cracking vehicle. It is still nice that they actually put this in the game, Forza games though, even though obviously it's not a production car. It's probably one of the few cars that isn't a production car that has been returning to the Forza games for a long while now. But yeah, it's still a great shame, but it is still worth trying out on this game. It is a joy to drive here on here as well, and yeah, no doubt a really rather competitive sports saloon as well, for if you're going up against cars of the time, and maybe even against cars that are newer. Nonetheless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.